Greetings, Melinda. Greetings, those joining us. My name is Dr. Monica Moody Moore. Welcome to today's Money Monday. It's an exciting time. Hopefully you can hear the cheer in my voice. 125 years Trinity, Washington has existed, and today we are here specifically and especially with you and your money in mind. This session today will be recorded for your purpose and for our ability to share and distribute. We know that knowledge is power and information is the commodity, so it is in all of our best interest to share generously with the knowledge and detail that we have to offer you today. We'll welcome those who join us as we're in progress, no worries. If you want to call friends to join, you do have the link, particularly if you're here with me now, so you can share that link freely. We will distribute this recording, so just keep that in mind. There are a few ways you can ask a question today. You can certainly raise your hand, you'll be recognized. You can also put questions in the chat if that's your desire. If you want to follow up with us afterward, you can do that as well. So there's many ways for you to get a part of the conversation today. In a moment, you'll see my screen. I'm sharing for your benefit. Again, I'm Dr. Monica Moody Moore. I share the doctor not to boast, but to inspire you should you decide to go further in your educational pursuits to the highest hilt. It certainly can be yours with hard work and determination. I'm as average as they come, and yet I worked hard, and I encourage you to do the same should you have that desire. Today's session is no longer than an hour total time. We're a few moments in already. And if we end early, no worries. There is plenty of opportunity for ongoing conversation. So let's not be trapped by the clock. Let's let the content and the nature of the discussion govern our time today. So in the course of our conversation, you're going to have lots of detail given to you. We'll go over the preparation and understanding to make sure you understand when we say financial aid, particularly at Trinity, Washington, what all is included in this process, how to go about it, what do you really need to know, and then we'll slow it down some to get into the details about grants, scholarships, loans, work study. Make sure you know where to begin as well as where to finish, and give you some helpful tips along the way. Sound okay to you? That's our agenda for today. We'll go through this step by step. First, I want to share that college is an investment and it is priceless. I say that for a couple of reasons. One, we know that education is transformative in its power. Once you know and learn something, you can't unknow and unlearn it. You may forget a little of the detail, but knowledge is something that sticks with you. So much so that along the way, the federal student loan process said, even in bankruptcy, your student loans may not be forgiven. Now we know President Biden has done favor to a number of citizens that had student loans, and some of that is forgiven with some caveats, of course. My point is this, and I want to say it clearly. College is an investment, and it is often an investment worth taking. And the reason I say it this way is not only is it transformative, we know that the social mobility of those with college degrees earned is quite different than those without. Of course, our system does have some nuances included in it. I would be mistaken if I said that racism and other isms don't exist. Clearly, we know that they do. But at the same time, education does allow for a leveling effect of some of these other isms that do take place in our world. It doesn't override the universe, but it certainly gives us more of a fighting chance to compete, to achieve, and to be recognized with the superlatives and social mobility that many of us seek. The person in this picture, well, you may wonder, why are we showing something from another college? It's my daughter, and with her permission, I've used her image. And let me tell you why this matters. She happened to have gone to one of the most expensive colleges in the American system. Now, I don't say that to boast. I say that to say, one, it's true. And two, I'm as regular as they come. Remember, I said that at the onset. And we were able to finance her credential through many of the same steps that I'm going to walk through with you, meaning you need not be a multi-million or billionaire in order to afford college. There are plenty of ways to underwrite the cost of your credential and to be able to afford your experience here. Thank you for acknowledging that. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. Thank you. So the cost of college is priceless because it is an investment in you. You are the beneficiary. You are the one that received the commodity and all of the assets that go along with the right and the privilege. So I do encourage you to not get snickerdoodled. There are some people at this point in our time talking about college being a non-essential element. Well, before you try that at home, I would encourage you to think twice about it. One, even if it looks at the onset that a college degree is not required, often for mobility's sake, advancement and progression in a career, those at the most senior levels do tend to have that credential. So I do encourage you to be very mindful, know your facts when you hear stories about perhaps not needing a credential, etc. You can also understand that perhaps I may be biased. Not only do I work in higher education, I've gone to the highest level myself, and I do encourage such learning for others. So while my bias is clear and known, I give it to you to make your own decision, but at the same time, keep in mind a number of even some of the politicians saying you don't need a degree already have one. And a number of their family members to do as well. So my point is, don't get snickerdoodled by the message about not needing a credential. So before I said we're going to go through the preparation and understanding scholarships, grants, loans, work study, I want to make sure you understand the differences between all of those. Oftentimes students will say, I need a scholarship to go to school. And the word scholarship does include the word scholar in there that often does speak to some type of merit or other superlative that recognizes someone's ability. Grants are free money, money that does not have to be repaid, whereas note loans, whether they're low interest rate loans like your federal student aid loans, or private loans that may have a slightly higher interest rate, loans do have to be repaid. And then there's federal work study that if you're eligible, you can gain access to opportunities to work on campus or in affiliates with the university that allow you to earn a wage as you study. So here's where I will slow down in hopes of being more clear and still encouraging with all the opportunities you have in front of you. The federal government has provided for a long time now the free application for federal student aid. It is just that, free application for federal student aid. If you're ever encountered by a consultant or some type of entity that says, well, with this small amount, you too can apply for a certain scholarship, just know that is not the FAFSA. The FAFSA will never ask for money for you to apply with the first application. So it is a free application for federal student aid. The DC government, and we're very thankful to them, not only are we situated in Washington, DC, and happy to be so, the DC government has been very generous with the number of grants and packages that it has made available to its residents. Let's say if you're listening to this recording and you're not a DC resident, do check with your home state or territory. Very often other states do have financing available, but it may have caveats, terms, and conditions. For example, if you're living in the state of Maryland and get money from the state of Maryland, there may be prohibitions on that money in terms of where you can spend it. I do encourage you to look under the hood and know the facts and figures for where the money source has come from. But I want to be clear in honing in on DC because one, a number of our students, a large population, come from DC. So having access to these grants is actually a windfall. You might be surprised to know that many students, and I might even go a step further to say the majority in our undergraduate full-time programs, many of those students are subsidized with DC grants to the tune of several $1,000s, leading to very little left to pay in tuition, if not almost free tuition. So I don't want to promise you completely free tuition, but I will say with the amount of subsidy that is available, it is quite common to pay not only very little if you're a DC resident. We do know evidence of a lot of students not having to pay at all as a DC resident with other grants in the scholarships that Trinity offers. But again, I'm going to go step by step. This is just an overview. In a moment, we'll go a little further under each of the hoods. The outside sources for aid, private scholarships, there's so many different organizations that offer private scholarships. You can get private scholarships through, if you're familiar with the Divine Nine, those are sororities and fraternities, mostly that are in the Black community, but they're open to lots of students. There's private sector scholarships. Dunkin' Donuts has a scholarship. Lots of the private entities like Target have scholarships. And while these may seem like far-fetches, they're really not. People do earn these funds in order to go to school. So don't let the big name scare you. Just because it's a big entity does not mean that you can't be competitive. You take your time and follow the rules, do exactly what the scholarship says of you in terms of meeting the deadline, check your work on essays, perhaps seek counsel from your advisors and others that support you here. There is quite the opportunity to pursue outside private scholarships. Institutional aid, grants, and scholarships. Most of the universities do give institutional aid. I'm going to talk specifically about Trinity, Washington. We give a significant amount of aid that is awarded without having to repay it and is awarded free to students. We give it in the way of scholarships for incoming students. Many students have something called a leadership scholarship, or maybe a Conway scholarship, or a Shannon scholarship. We have a number of benefactors that have given money to Trinity, and we in turn then award that money to scholarship recipients through the university. We also use some of our own revenue sources, money that we have earned that now is given back to students in the form of institutional aid. So there's lots of different options there. Remember I said I would slow down and go piece by piece into each area. This is the free application for federal student aid. The website is listed here. Do take note of it. You'll need that particularly to apply for scholarships or aid or underwriting in ways that you may not even be familiar. And I sometimes hear families say, well, we make too much money to be eligible for financial aid. Well, I wouldn't assume that too quickly. One is some of the aid that's granted is not based on your need at all. It may be based on merit or other factors, but the FAFSA is still necessary to make those awards possible. I encourage families to do the FAFSA no matter what. Remember previously when I showed you a picture of my daughter at that expensive school? Well, the good news is she did graduate. In 4 years' time, she has her undergraduate degree. She's in medical school. But it is because of the FAFSA, which we filed every single year, that I was able to help my daughter underwrite the cost of her credential in a way that worked for our family. So just because I do it doesn't mean that you should, but I'm just giving myself as a real life testimony of what can be achieved in ways that are prepared and available to you through the federal government. You will have to get a PIN number, and there is another area here. It says apply at HTTPS. Well, you'll need to have a PIN number in order to be able to file your FAFSA. It's a PIN code. Keep note of that, because once you get your PIN, you're well on your way to setting up the process. Every year, the FAFSA becomes a shorter and shorter and shorter process, or so it seems. This year, they've actually taken out even more questions. So supposedly, you can do the FAFSA in less than 1 hour's time, less than. Think of it like this. 1 hour of my time could equal thousands of dollars in my pocket that's available to me to then earn a credential that gives me long-term earning potential and return on investment. That really does seem like a good use of 1 hour of my time if I'm able to secure the federal student loan, which is a low interest rate loan, much lower than some of the private loans. Even with rates going up, the federal student aid loan is still much lower than your privately held loans. The FAFSA code for Trinity, Washington, 001460. Repeat it after me. 001460. You got it. The reason that code is so important is because once you do the FAFSA, you have to send it to the institutions of your choice. If you complete your FAFSA, but you never send it to Trinity, Washington, guess what? You won't get the benefits of the FAFSA being applied toward your tuition at Trinity. So we need to make sure you know that code, 001460. You'll also want to do the FAFSA as early as possible. The new FAFSA is released October 1st of this year. The beauty of the October 1st deadline and getting your FAFSA in early, one is it's done. You can wipe your hands clean saying that I've gotten my FAFSA done. I've at least started that journey toward financially underwriting the cost of my credential. That is a benefit to you. Now, if you can't do it August or October 1st, November 1st, December 1st, you need not despair. You still can file the FAFSA in the beginning of 2023. Some people watching this video may be wanting to start classes in January of 2023. That's fine if you want to start this coming academic school year. It's fine if you want to start next fall, but I do encourage you to start. You notice I didn't say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because what we know to be true is that those that start have a greater likelihood of finishing than those who never get started. I know it sounds simple, but it's so true. If you keep putting off things, then what happens is time passes and the credential escapes you. So I do encourage you to file the FAFSA as early as possible, but don't despair if it's not done October 1st. You can still file your FAFSA well into the start of 2023. If you're applying for spring term, go ahead and do your FAFSA sooner than later. If you're applying for summer or next fall, I still want you to get your FAFSA done in the January, February timeframe, March if you can. But again, this is less about stress and more about, do you have what you need to make an informed decision? So access to the FAFSA, understanding the questions, working with your financial aid office, filing it early and filing it fully is what's most critical. This slide here I really enjoy because these little bubbles do mean something. While the FAFSA does have a formula underneath of it, it then determines your EFC, estimated family contribution. That's how much the federal government believes you should be able to pay. Now, the reason I say it this way, how much the federal government believes you should be able to pay, is the formula that underwrites the FAFSA. Some may wonder, where did they get that figure from? How does the government believe I should be able to pay as much as perhaps your EFC may suggest? Sometimes your EFC may suggest very little, and that's the government's way of saying, we've looked at your finances, we believe that you would need additional financial support to underwrite the cost of this credential. But these are not robots. It's a formula, yes, but it's done with human factors understanding. That is, they look at certain matters that may have happened to you along the way. Did a parent get married or divorced? Have you lost a parent or spouse? Are you an independent contributor, so you're financing yourself? Did you lose a job? Did you gain a job? What happened to you financially? Did you have a major medical health matter that required some of your own out-of-pocket expenses to pay? All of those factors can be factors that contribute to modifications in your estimated family contribution or in the federal government's assessment of how much you're able to pay. But no one will know this unless you bring it to the surface. That's why after you file your FAFSA, you'll still want to work with your financial aid counselor closely so that you can ensure that everything that matters is made known to the financial aid office, matters in terms of your financial well-being. So if you've had some changes in your circumstance, do let us know so that we can work with you. Remember earlier I said I wanted to go item by item and get under the hood? Now we're talking about the DC grants a little more closely. Here you'll see a website, OSSE, OSSE, is the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. Dr. Christina Grant, who was recently on our campus not long ago, as we have dual enrolled students taking high school classes, taking college classes while they're in high school. I give credit here because the DC government is doing the right things. They understand the value and the importance of education and the role it plays both in your career abilities and in your social mobility. So I do credit what the Office of the State Superintendent of Education is doing with all of the DC grants. And there are multiple grants that you can apply for. Now, each of them do require a separate application process. It is not a one size fits all. You don't do one application for every single grant. You file for them separately, and they each have their respective deadlines. You will need to prove that you are a DC resident, but there is information that you provide in terms of your electricity bills or in other things that your driver's license that attest to the fact that you are a resident, and there are age requirements. So take note of this screen. These slides will be made available to you. You need not try to copy things down unless you want to. I have found that sometimes taking my own notes also helps me to remember things. Like you're going to remember that FAFSA code for Trinity, right? Right. So before I said there's different types of ways to pay for college, the federal Pell Grant, and in the far right column here, I put a quote from the website that is also listed, which is a government entity, about the a maximum amount for the federal Pell Grant. That amount has been going up year after year. I can say as a college student myself, while I'm dating myself, it was a long time ago, I was a Pell eligible student. Now, granted, remember I said I've earned a doctorate since then. So you can go from Pell to a doctorate degree. All of these things are within sight for you. But the Pell amount was way different then. So was the cost of education. Now the maximum is $6,895 for the Pell Grant. For this award year. And it is subject to change and increase in future years. I won't be able to promise that, but I can say that over years, the Pell Grant has shifted during flight, and now it's at $6,895. There's also state grants. Remember previously I talked about the DC grants. I also gave the example if you're in Maryland, there's different grants that you can pursue. You can even go into Google and just do a search for grants or scholarships in your state and put in the state and see all the options and opportunities that are revealed to you. Federal work study, once you do the FAFSA, case in point, you must do the FAFSA, then we find out how much you're eligible for, whether it's Pell, whether it's other grants or scholarships, institutional aid, as well as if you're eligible for federal work study that allows you to work on campus, earn discretionary funds or money, however you choose to use it, that can help underwrite the cost of your education and your time not working full-time elsewhere. So federal work study is something that I certainly encourage as well. Institutional aid, I mentioned how Trinity Washington gives a lot of institutional aid. We give scholarships to most of our incoming students in the College of Arts and Sciences. Why? Because they're full-time undergraduate students. Now, if you're listening to this session and you say, but I'm a graduate student, what type of institutional aid do you have for me? Well, I will say that institutional aid for graduate students is a bit different One, because you've already earned your undergraduate degree, so perhaps you did benefit somewhere along the way, perhaps, with some of those other options and opportunities. There's also employer reimbursement sometimes. If you're a grad student and you're working full-time, you can check with your employer. They often sometimes have employer reimbursements, particularly if you can prove that a particular course is helpful to you in the nature of your work. All of these things, even as a grad student, can be helpful to help underwrite the costs. There's also outside scholarships for some grad students that may be eligible. I can say I'm definitely a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. We give scholarships for both undergraduate, and there's also some scholarships for graduate students. We're not the only ones. We're certainly part of Divine Nine, and other scholarships are available through other sororities and fraternities, as well as other social organizations and private donations as well. So here's some tips. Make sure you pay attention to deadlines. Remember when I said October 1 is the release of the FAFSA? You don't have to do the FAFSA on October 1, but it does help to know that the FAFSA is available October 1. Therefore, you can start that process sooner rather than later. But it does help to have your past year's tax returns. Let's say you didn't do the very last year, you filed for an extension, or you're in the process of getting them done. The FAFSA will also take your prior year's tax returns. So you don't have to let the most immediate year get in your way if in fact you don't have those tax returns quite yet. The FAFSA will accept prior year's tax returns. But get all of your paperwork together, your financial information, tax return information. If you're doing it yourself or if you're relying on your parents, do round up those things. It will save time as you sit down to do the paperwork. Remember, the FAFSA says now you can do it in less than 1 hour's time. And college is an investment. So the time you spend now, you're actually the beneficiary of it later. So maybe you need not worry about using an hour or even 90 minutes to 2 hours of your time now, because it's still time that you're investing back to you, because you will be the beneficiary of the education and the outcome. Communicate with your institution. We have the Office of Enrollment Services. We have financial aid counselors that are here that are able to support and guide you. The one-on-one aspect of Trinity is very prevalent and very real. Any student would probably attest to that. I hear over and over again, students talk about not only finding their strength and discovering their strength, but having a real partner at Trinity as they found their strength and they work through all of their administrative and academic needs. So do work with the financial aid office. They are here to support you and they will work with you one-on-one. Remember, colleges want to help you make a way for yourself. That's the business we're in. We're not in the business of non-degree completion. We are in the business of degree attainment, and making that progress is something we take enormous pride and delight in doing. That's why we've given our lives over to this type of work. Apply to scholarships outside of your institution. Now, this is a private source, but jlvcollegecounseling.com, I have to credit where I got this from. We used to do the Money Mondays, and Larry Davis, who at the time was with the Educational Opportunity Center, was the source that first turned us on to jlvcollegecounseling.com, and that's where that source has come from. If you go there, you'll see a whole list of scholarships that have just been compiled in one source. So that you can easily search and find. Remember, the sticker price for the college, particularly for undergrad, is not usually the price you will pay as a final dollar amount. So as you look at the tuition costs, particularly if you're going to school as a full-time undergraduate, that is usually not the final cost of attendance. There are many more subsidies and grants and scholarships that are often given, particularly for full-time undergrads. Now, again, you may wonder, why am I separating out full-time undergrads so much from master's students or from part-time undergraduate students? Because students that do work as they go to school, the understanding is that as you're working, you're also earning so that you can underwrite the cost of your credential a bit differently than someone who's going to school full-time and may be unable to work full-time during that time. So when you think about it that way, it does tend to make sense to believe that a full-time traditional undergraduate may have different financial underwriting than someone going part-time who's able to work as they go to school. This QR code is for our view book and for our prospect form. There are people that will see this video who may not quite be with us right now, but are making decisions about where to attend. I want you to have an opportunity to scan this code and to be able to be in touch with us. If you get in touch with admissions and you start the process, we're locked at the hip with enrollment services and financial aid, so the two work in tandem with each other. We know getting you admitted without thinking about the financing of your credential is probably narrow and short-sighted. So it's in our better interest to work with you not only on the admissions process, but to help ensure that you understand how to finance your degree and get you connected to all the resources that are available. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can take any questions that may have resulted. If anyone has a question at this time, it's a fine idea to ask that now. Again, this recording will be shared and the slides repurposed so that you can have access to all the information I've just given. In fact, I can go about putting it in the chat right now so that anyone who is on this session in real time can have access to this presentation without difficulty. I've added it to the chat, so you should be able to click open and you can download that to your own screen. I don't mind you sharing it broadly. I just ask that if you do, you certainly credit and acknowledge Trinity Washington, just part of giving good citation to any work that is not of your own. I just ask that you cite Trinity Washington as the source for this valuable information. Any questions? Well, without any questions, I will conclude with a couple of thoughts. One is education is transformative. It is the great equalizer. It certainly can be. It does need to be coupled with real effort and desire to earn the credential. And there are places such as Trinity Washington that is well equipped to help all students discover their strength and craft their way forward. In fact, we have visitors from the Department of Education coming to visit us on campus tomorrow. They've recognized that Trinity Washington is a leader in not only wraparound support services, but speaking truth to our mission of educating for justice. And in that recognition, in celebration of your time and respect for it, I'll conclude here. I will give in the chat my personal contact information at Trinity DC, to make sure you know how to reach me should you decide that you want to know more or do more, or you need some support in making your dreams come true. It's moormon@trinitydc.edu is my direct email. I'll also put my phone number here because we are an all access institution that ensures that everyone who needs something has a direct point of contact in order to get those needs met. It's my pleasure to speak with you today, and I give you my information in the slide deck is there. Again, this recording will be shared, and I appreciate you. Have a great evening.